The War Council chamber of the Crithian hegemony was a monument to conquest. Holographic displays showed star systems claimed, species subjugated, resources extracted. 500 years of unbroken expansion glittered in the air like jewels. High Commander Vexthor stood before the assembled admiralty, his four arms spread in a gesture of dismissal. The scouts must be malfunctioning. These numbers are absurd. The intelligence officer, a younger Crithian named Selvan, gestured nervously at the data streaming across the central display. Commander, we've verified the readings 17 times. The human homeworld, they call it Earth, shows technological development consistent with early spaceflight. Chemical rockets. Primitive orbital stations. But the population density is 8 billion. Vexthor interrupted, mandibles clicking in what passed for Crithian laughter. On a single world. Packed like livestock. Half of them live in squalor by their own admission. He turned to address the assembled admirals. This is what happens when a species lacks the vision to expand properly. They breed themselves into misery. Admiral Kresh, commander of the Third Fleet, leaned forward. Her scales gleamed under the chamber's harsh lighting. The scout report mentions their military capacity. Selvan pulled up another display. Fragmented. Over 200 nation-states, many with standing armies. But their weapons are crude. Kinetic projectiles. Chemical explosives. Their most powerful devices are fission-based, barely sufficient to crack a city. And their space presence? Negligible. A handful of satellites. A small station in orbit. They've sent primitive probes to their neighboring planets, but established no colonies. Selvan hesitated. There is one anomaly in the data. Enough, Vexthor cut him off. What you're describing is a pre-spacefaring civilization ripe for integration. Their lack of unity makes them even easier targets. We'll offer the standard terms. Submit to hegemony authority, provide resource quotas and military conscripts, or face subjugation. The humans have no faster-than-light capability, Admiral Kresh noted. They won't even know we're coming until we're in their system. Precisely. Vexthor's expression shifted to satisfaction. Dispatch a compliance fleet. Standard peacekeeping force. 3 cruisers, a dozen frigates, support ships. More than enough to handle a divided, primitive world. We'll have them integrated within a solar cycle. Selvan tried once more. Commander, about that anomaly. Dismissed, officer. The decision is made. The young intelligence officer saluted and left, datapad clutched in his hands. The anomaly bothered him. Human communication networks showed unusual patterns. Mathematical exchanges. Theoretical physics discussions. Weapons development programs that seemed far more sophisticated than their deployed technology suggested. But orders were orders. Back in his quarters, Selvan couldn't let it go. He pulled up the raw data from the scouts, bypassing the filtered summaries that had been presented to the council. What he found made his secondary heart skip beats. Human internet communications, their primary global network, showed discussions of concepts the hegemony had only theorized about. Quantum entanglement manipulation, controlled singularity generation, matter-antimatter annihilation beyond simple explosive devices. These weren't official military programs. These were public discussions, scientists sharing ideas, students debating theories, amateurs building models. If this was what they discussed openly, what were their classified programs working on? Selvan drafted a supplementary report. I marked it as urgent. Send it to Vexthor's personal queue. It was flagged as unsubstantiated speculation and deleted without being read. 6 weeks later, the Crithian compliance fleet translated into the Sol system. Captain Dracoth commanded the lead cruiser, the Eternal Dominance. 20 years of peacekeeping operations had taught him the rhythm of conquest. Most species submitted immediately when faced with superior technology. Those that didn't rarely lasted long against hegemony firepower. Scanning the primary world now, his sensor officer reported. Confirming scout data. 8.1 billion biological signatures. Heavy electromagnetic pollution. Primitive satellite network. No orbital defenses detected. Dracoth nodded. Standard approach. Position the fleet in high orbit. Broadcast compliance terms in their major languages. Prepare demonstration strikes on unpopulated areas if they resist. Military targets only. We want this population intact for integration. Sir, we're detecting multiple transmission sources on the surface. They've noticed our arrival. Of course they have. Probably panicking. Dracoth settled into his command seat. Open a channel. Let's get this over with. The transmission was sent in 17 human languages simultaneously, translated by hegemony linguistic algorithms. Attention, inhabitants of the planet you call Earth. You have been selected for integration into the Crithian hegemony. Resistance is futile. Submit your planetary governments for processing within one solar rotation or face consequences. This is your only warning. The response came faster than expected. A single voice, speaking in what the translator identified as English. Calm, almost amused. Crithian vessel, this is Earth Defense Command. We've received your generous offer. We're going to have to decline. Dracoth's mandibles clicked in irritation. Predictable. Scan for their military installations. Prepare demonstration strikes on the largest uninhabited area. The desert region should suffice. Sir, the sensor officer's voice carried a note of confusion. I'm detecting a power surge from their moon. Their moon? Yes, sir. Large artificial structure on the far side. It wasn't there in the scout reports from 6 weeks ago. Dracoth frowned. Show me. The display resolved to show Earth's moon. On the far side, invisible from the planet's surface, a massive installation sprawled across hundreds of square kilometers. Power readings were spiking. When did they? The installation fired. It wasn't a missile. It wasn't a beam weapon. It was something Dracoth had never seen before. A sphere of distorted space erupted from the lunar installation and crossed the distance to his fleet at a significant fraction of light speed. His shields flared automatically, designed to deflect energy weapons and kinetic projectiles. The sphere passed through them like they weren't there. The Eternal Dominance shuddered. Every system on the ship screamed warnings simultaneously. The fusion core destabilized. The gravity plating failed. The hull integrity field collapsed. All hands, brace for. The ship tore itself apart from the inside out. Dracoth had one final, confused thought before his command deck vaporized. How did they do that? Aboard the remaining ships of the compliance fleet, chaos erupted. The flagship is gone. What hit us? I didn't see any missile launch. Scanning the debris field, fusion containment failure, cascade effect through all primary systems. Admiral Kresh, commanding from the cruiser Vindication, watched the destruction with cold calculation. She'd seen ships destroyed before, but this was different. Whatever hit the Eternal Dominance had bypassed every defensive system simultaneously. Analysis, she snapped. Her science officer worked frantically. The weapon appears to be some form of spatial manipulation device. It creates a localized field that destabilizes matter-energy bonds. Our shields are designed to deflect or absorb. They're useless against this. Can we counter it? Not with current technology. We need to completely redesign our defensive systems from the ground up. Kresh's tail lashed in anger. This doesn't match the intelligence reports. They're supposed to be primitive. Admiral, receiving another transmission from the planet. The same calm voice. Still amused. Crithian fleet, that was a warning shot. Your flagship is gone because you came here making threats. We don't appreciate threats. You have two choices. Leave our system immediately, or we demonstrate what happens when we stop being polite. Kresh's pride warred with her tactical sense. Pride 1. All ships, attack formation. Target the lunar installation. Full bombardment. Wipe it off the surface. The fleet opened fire. Dozens of energy lances and kinetic impactors streaked toward the moon. The lunar installation's shields flared to life and held. Every shot, every missile, every beam, absorbed or deflected. The shield didn't even flicker. Impossible, Kresh breathed. Nothing can sustain that level of bombardment. Admiral, multiple power surges across the lunar surface. They're not just defending, they're charging weapons. Evasive action. All ships, scatter formation. Too late. The lunar installation fired again. And again. And again. 6 more spheres of distorted space ripped through the fleet. 6 more ships tore themselves apart. Fusion cores went critical. Hull plating sheared away. Crew compartments vented into space. Kresh watched her fleet die in less than 30 seconds. Retreat, she screamed. All remaining ships, emergency FTL, now. The survivors, 3 frigates and her damaged cruiser, jumped out of the system in a panic. Behind them, Earth hung in the darkness, untouched and unafraid. The transmission followed them into FTL, carried on tachyon particles that shouldn't have been able to penetrate their communication shielding. Tell your hegemony. Earth is not interested in conquest. We're not interested in the Empire. We're interested in being left alone. Come back with peaceful intentions, or don't come back at all. This is your only warning. While the Crithian fleet fled in disorder, a very different scene played out in Geneva. Dr. Sarah Chun stood in the emergency session of the United Nations Security Council, watching the live feed from the lunar installation. Threat neutralized, the voice from Lunar Defense Command reported. All hostile vessels have retreated from the system. No human casualties. The consequence is standing by for further orders. Sarah let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Stand down to alert status. Maintain watch protocols. I want to know the moment anything else enters our system. Understood, ma'am. Lunar Defense, standing down. The Security Council chamber erupted in a dozen languages simultaneously. Did we just start an interstellar war? 15 alien ships destroyed. What if they come back with more? We should have negotiated. Now they'll see us as hostile. Sarah held up her hand. Silence fell gradually. 6 weeks ago, she said quietly, our deep space telescopes detected an alien probe entering the outer system. It scanned our worlds, our communications, our defenses. Then it left. She pulled up data on the main display. Our analysts determined it was a scouting mission. Standard protocol for a species looking for conquest targets. They saw our divided nations, our primitive space presence, our crowded homeworld, and they made a decision. They decided we were weak. So we had a choice. Wait for them to return with a compliance demand and submit. Or prepare. We chose to prepare. Another council member spoke up. The lunar installation. How did we build it so fast? Sarah gestured to a man sitting in the back of the chamber. Dr. Marcus Webb, director of the Theoretical Weapons Division. He'll explain. Dr. Webb stood, a thin man in his 60s with tired eyes. The weapon we deploy today isn't new. The theoretical framework was developed 23 years ago by a joint U.S. Russian-Chinese research team. We called it Project Dissonance. He pulled up schematics. It generates a field that disrupts the strong nuclear force at a quantum level. Essentially, it makes matter forget how to hold itself together. We never built it because, frankly, it terrified us. When the probe visited our system, we knew what was coming. So we dusted off the plans. Every major nation contributed resources. We had fabrication facilities on 3 continents running 24-hour shifts. We launched the components in secret, assembled them on the far side of the moon where Earth-based telescopes couldn't see. 6 weeks. That's all it took to build humanity's first real weapon of war against an interstellar threat. And pray to whatever you believe in that we never have to build another one. Silence filled the chamber. Finally, the Chinese representative spoke. You said first real weapon, implying there could be others? Dr. Webb's expression darkened. The Theoretical Weapons Division has 147 projects in various states of development, ranging from ship-mounted directed energy weapons to planet-scale defense grids to things I hope we never have to deploy. We've spent centuries learning to kill each other efficiently. Every breakthrough in physics, every advancement in engineering, we immediately asked, how can this be weaponized? We couldn't help ourselves. But we also learned restraint. We built nuclear weapons and then chose not to use them. We developed biological agents and banned them. We created chemical weapons and agreed to destroy our stockpiles. Not because we couldn't use them, but because we knew we shouldn't. He looked around the chamber. That restraint doesn't extend to aliens who show up demanding our submission. They threatened us. We responded. And now they know Earth is off limits. Sarah took back the floor. The question before this council is simple. What do we do next? The aliens will report back to their government. They'll either come back with diplomats or with a larger fleet. We need to be ready for both. The debate raged for hours. Some nations wanted to build more weapons, prepare for total war. Others argued for reaching out diplomatically, proving humanity wasn't as aggressive as the initial response suggested. In the end, compromise won. Humanity would prepare for war while hoping for peace. Construction began on 12 more ships like the consequence. Defense installations were planned for Mars, the asteroid belt, even the outer planets. Every nation with space capability contributed. But they also prepared a diplomatic package. Cultural information. Scientific data, art, music, literature, A comprehensive introduction to humanity designed to show they were more than just weapons and threats. If the aliens came back peacefully, they'd be welcomed. If they came back with warships, they'd face the full force of a species that had spent its entire existence perfecting the art of warfare. High Commander Vexthor received the news 3 days later. 15 ships, thousands of crew, gone. The fleet had been destroyed by a species that, according to intelligence, barely had functional spaceflight. Explain, he said quietly. Dangerous quiet. Selvan stood before the War Council, vindicated and terrified. The anomaly I tried to report, Commander. Human communication networks showed unusual activity. They were discussing theoretical weapons, exotic physics, technologies we assumed were beyond their capability. Why didn't the scouts detect the lunar installation? Because it wasn't there 6 weeks ago, sir. They built it after the scouts left. Built it? Vexthor's voice rose. An installation that size, with that level of capability, in 6 weeks? Yes, sir. Selvan pulled up the data. Human industrial capacity is unusual. Their population density isn't a weakness, it's a strength. 8 billion individuals means 8 billion potential workers, scientists, engineers. Their fragmented nature forced them to develop rapidly. Competition between nation-states drove technological advancement at rates we've never observed. Another admiral spoke up. But they're still primitive. Chemical rockets. Kinetic weapons. Deployed technology, yes, Selvan agreed. But their theoretical knowledge is far more advanced. They've been developing weapons for centuries. Weapons designed to fight each other. They just never mass-produced them because they were too dangerous. Too dangerous for them, Vexthor said slowly, but not for us. Exactly. When our scouts entered their system, they knew what was coming. They had 6 weeks to prepare, and they used every minute of it. The council chamber fell silent. Finally, Vexthor spoke. What's our next move? Send a larger fleet? Selvan pulled up more data. His hands trembled slightly as he worked. Commander, I recommend we review the full scope of human capability before making that decision. I've been analyzing their communication networks for the past 72 hours. What I've found is concerning. The display changed, showing intercepts of human scientific discussions. This is a conversation between human theoretical physicists. Public, not classified. They're discussing ways to weaponize quantum entanglement to create weapons that could destroy targets across interstellar distances. Instantaneously. This is a discussion on a human education platform. Students debating how to manipulate space-time to create localized time dilation fields. They're proposing using it to age enemy ships into dust in seconds. This is from a human entertainment forum. Amateurs discussing the theoretical possibility of igniting gas giant planets and using them as stellar-scale weapons. None of these are official military programs. These are civilians, thinking about weapons. For fun. Another admiral leaned forward. Are any of these actually possible? The hegemony's best scientists say no. But 6 weeks ago, we said spatial manipulation weapons were impossible. The humans proved us wrong. Selvan pulled up another data stream. Here's what really concerns me. I've identified 73 human research institutions working on classified projects. The details are hidden, but the energy signatures and resource allocations suggest they're all weapons-related. Humans don't just develop weapons when threatened. They develop them constantly, compulsively. It's part of their culture. He showed images of human history, wars stretching back thousands of years, weapons evolving from sharpened sticks to nuclear missiles. They've been fighting each other since before they had written language. Every technological advancement was immediately weaponized. Fire became Greek fire. Chemistry became explosive. Atomic physics became bombs. They can't help themselves. The only thing that stopped them from destroying their own world was fear. Fear of what would happen if they actually used their worst weapons. But that fear only applies to using weapons on each other. We're not part of their species. We're not protected by their restraint. Vexthor stared at the data for a long moment. Recommendations? Diplomatic contact. Immediately. Make it clear we're no longer interested in conquest. Offer trade agreements, cultural exchange, mutual defense pact, anything to establish peaceful relations. And if they refuse, then we leave them alone. Because if we attack with a larger fleet, they'll build larger weapons. And Commander, based on what I'm seeing, I don't think we can win an arms race against them. He pulled up one final image. a human scientific paper published openly. This was written 5 years ago. It proposes a method for converting entire stars into weapons. The math checks out. The physics is sound. They could actually do it. They haven't. Not because they can't, but because they haven't needed to. If we give them a reason, he left the sentence unfinished. The council debated for 6 hours. Pride argued for escalation. The hegemony had never backed down from a fight. To do so now would show weakness to every species they'd conquered. But strategic sense argued for retreat. The cost of continuing could be total annihilation. In the end, survival won. Prepare a diplomatic mission, Vexthor ordered. Full ambassadorial delegation. No weapons. We'll approach Earth with peaceful intentions and hope they're willing to talk. And if they're not, then we add them to the list of systems to avoid and hope we never have to deal with them again. The diplomatic mission arrived on Earth 3 weeks later. No weapons. No threats. Just a small ship carrying ambassadors and a very carefully worded message. We apologize for our previous approach. We seek peaceful contact and mutual understanding. The response came quickly, in perfect Crithian this time. Apology accepted. Welcome to Earth. Let's talk. The negotiations took place in Geneva, in a building humans called the United Nations headquarters. Vexthor himself attended, along with Selvan and a delegation of hegemony diplomats. The human delegation was led by a woman named Dr. Sarah Chun, Secretary General of the United Nations. She was small by Crithian standards. Unarmed. Physically unimpressive. She was also absolutely terrifying. Thank you for coming, Dr. Chun said, sitting across from Vexthor. I understand you've reconsidered your initial offer. We made certain assumptions, Vexthor said carefully. Incorrect assumptions. You assumed we were weak because we're fragmented, because we fight among ourselves, because we haven't expanded beyond our own planet. Yes. Dr. Chin smiled. It wasn't a comforting expression. Commander Vexthor, let me explain something about humanity. We fight among ourselves because we care deeply about ideas. Freedom, justice, religion, resources. We've been killing each other over these things for our entire history. That's inefficient. It's also made us very, very good at it. She leaned forward. Every weapon we've ever built, we built to use against each other. Every defense, every tactic, every strategy, developed for human versus human conflict. Do you know what that means? Vexthor didn't answer. It means we've spent thousands of years preparing to fight an enemy exactly as intelligent, creative, and ruthless as we are. Your compliance fleet, your weapons, your tactics, compared to what we've designed to kill each other, they're primitive. The lunar installation was built from theoretical plans we've had for 20 years. We just never constructed it because there was no need. There was no external threat. Her smile faded. Until you showed up. Selvan spoke up. Why didn't you expand? With your capability, you could have claimed dozens of systems by now. Because we didn't need to, Dr. Chin replied. We have 8 billion people on one planet. We're learning to live sustainably, to manage our resources, to cooperate despite our differences. Spreading across the stars won't fix our problems. It'll just export them. So you stay confined to one world? We're not confined. We're focused. We'll expand when we're ready. When we've proven we can live with ourselves. Not before. She pulled up a display. Let me show you something. Images appeared. Human cities, massive and gleaming. Agricultural systems feeding billions. Educational institutions churning out millions of scientists and engineers every year. This is what we've built by staying home. We've learned to manage a complex, crowded, diverse civilization. We've developed technologies to sustain it. We've created art, music, literature, science. We've also built weapons. Lots of weapons. Because we're good at that too. More images. Missiles. Ships. Installations. These are the weapons we've actually deployed. The ones we're comfortable with. Conventional. Controllable. The images changed. Became schematics. Theoretical designs. These are the ones we haven't built yet. The ones that scare us. Vexthor recognized some of the physics. Others were beyond his comprehension. We have plans for weapons that could sterilize worlds. Crack planets. Ignite stars. Tear holes in space-time itself. We haven't built them because we don't need them. And because we're terrified of what would happen if we did. But if you force us to choose between submission and survival. She left the implication hanging. Vexthor understood then. Humanity wasn't weak. They were disciplined in a way the hegemony had never comprehended. "What do you want from us?" he asked. "Nothing, initially. But since you're here, let's establish some ground rules. First, Earth is off-limits to any kind of military force. Second, if you want to trade with us, we're willing to talk. Third, and this is important, you need to spread the word to every other species out there. Humanity doesn't want to conquer anyone. We don't want to fight. But if you bring war to our doorstep, we'll end it. Decisively. You're threatening the entire hegemony? I'm promising you that we'll defend ourselves. How you choose to interpret that is up to you." The negotiations continued for weeks. Dr. Chen introduced Vex Thor to human culture. Music from Mozart to modern synthesized compositions. Art from the Renaissance to digital installations. Literature spanning thousands of years and hundreds of languages. "We're more than weapons," she explained during a tour of the Louvre. "We create. We build. We dream. The fact that we're good at killing doesn't define us." She showed him human scientific institutions. CERN's particle collider. The International Space Station. Research centers developing fusion power, quantum computers, medical technologies. We solve problems, not just military ones. We're working on curing diseases, extending lifespan, and understanding the universe. The weapons are a side effect of our nature. We're competitive, aggressive, curious. We push boundaries. Sometimes that creates art. Sometimes it creates weapons. We're trying to create more art. Vex Thor found himself fascinated. The hegemony had absorbed dozens of species, but none like this. None with such contradictions. "You're afraid of your own potential," he observed. "Yes," Sarah agreed. "Because we know what we're capable of. We've seen it throughout our history. Nuclear weapons, biological agents, chemical warfare. Every time we develop something powerful, some of us use it to hurt others. So we build restrictions, laws, treaties, moral frameworks. We try to control our worst impulses. But we can't eliminate them. We can only manage them." She turned to face him. "That's why we're offering you this deal. We don't want to be the galaxy's weaponsmiths. We don't want to be feared. We want to be partners, colleagues, friends, if possible. But we will defend ourselves. Always." The negotiations concluded with a formal treaty. The hegemony agreed to recognize Earth as a sovereign system, off-limits to military action. They would establish trade relations, cultural exchanges, and mutual defense agreements. In return, humanity agreed to share some of their defensive technology. Not weapons, defenses, shield systems, medical advances, agricultural techniques. Both sides were satisfied. Both sides were nervous. Because both sides knew. This peace was built on mutual respect born from mutual fear. 6 months after the initial contact, Vex Thor attended a demonstration. Humanity had agreed to share some of their defensive technology with the hegemony. Shield technology that could actually stop the spatial manipulation devices. The demonstration took place in orbit around Mars. Dr. Chen stood beside Vex Thor on an observation platform. "We're going to show you something," she said. "Consider it a goodwill gesture." A human ship emerged from behind Mars. It was small, barely larger than a hegemony frigate. Unarmed, according to sensors. "That's a colony ship," Dr. Chen explained. "We're finally ready to expand. Mars first, then the outer system. Eventually, we'll move to nearby stars. You're beginning your expansion? Carefully. Sustainably. We've learned from our mistakes." She gestured at the ship. "That vessel uses a drive system we developed 30 years ago, but never deployed. Faster than light travel, without the spatial distortion your ships create. Want to see how it works?" The ship accelerated and vanished. Vex Thor's sensor screamed. The ship hadn't jumped at FTL. It had simply ceased to exist in normal space. 3 seconds later, it reappeared on the other side of Mars. Instantaneous travel across millions of kilometers. "Impossible," Vex Thor breathed. "Theoretical until last year," Dr. Chen corrected. "We finally figured out how to stabilize the field. No more travel time between stars. No more navigation hazards. Just point and go. This changes everything. Warfare, trade, exploration. Which is why we're sharing it with you. Free of charge. Along with the shield technology, improved fusion cores, and a dozen other innovations we've developed." Dr. Chen turned to face him. "We're sharing because we don't want an arms race, Commander. We don't want to be the galaxy's weaponsmiths. We want to be partners. But the power you're giving away. will be used by species who actually want to expand and explore. We're happy to stay in our corner of the galaxy and develop. We'll share what we learn, trade for what we need, and defend ourselves if necessary. That's all we want. Vexthor looked at the small human standing beside him. Understanding finally dawned. Humanity wasn't weak. They weren't primitive. They weren't even particularly peaceful. They were patient. They'd spent thousands of years learning to manage their own destructive nature. They'd turned their competitive instincts into cooperative innovation. They'd weaponized their divisions into creative diversity. And when threatened, they'd proven they could unleash hell itself. But they chose not to. That was the most terrifying thing of all. The hegemony accepts your offer, Vexthor said formally. And thank you for not destroying us when you could have. Dr. Chin smiled. You're welcome. Besides, we're going to need friends out here. The galaxy's a big place. No telling what else is waiting in the dark. 2 years later, the Crithian hegemony faced an invasion from the Varith swarm, a species that consumed entire worlds. The hegemony fleets, equipped with human shield technology and FTL drives, held the line. But barely. The Varith were unlike anything they'd faced before. Biological ships that adapted to every weapon. Endless numbers. No fear. No mercy. When defeat seemed inevitable, when the hegemony's core worlds were threatened, Vexthor sent a desperate message to Earth. The response came within hours. We're on our way. A human fleet arrived. Not a large fleet. Just 12 ships. They didn't fire weapons. They didn't engage in combat. They deployed a device. The Varith swarm, a biological collective that had terrorized the galaxy for 1,000 years, simply stopped. Every ship, every soldier, every organism, frozen in place by a field that suspended biological processes without killing. The human commander's message was brief. We don't like bullies. Consider this a gift. The field will dissipate in 72 hours. We suggest you use that time to establish containment protocols. The humans left. The hegemony, working with a dozen other species, managed to contain the swarm. It took years, but they won. All because humanity had decided to help. In the hegemony archives, Selvan filed his final report on humanity. Species classification, paradox. Humans are simultaneously primitive and advanced, peaceful and deadly, divided and unified. They possess the capability to conquer the galaxy, but choose to stay home. They can build planet killers, but prefer to build gardens. Recommendation, never threaten them. Never underestimate them. And if possible, never give them a reason to build the weapons they're theoretically capable of creating. Because if humanity ever decides to stop being patient, the galaxy won't survive what comes next. Addendum. Despite all of this, humans remain the most reliable allies we've ever encountered. They keep their promises. They share their knowledge freely. They defend the weak and oppose tyranny wherever they find it. They're terrifying, and they're the best thing that ever happened to us. Final note. Intelligence Officer Selvan has accepted a position with Earth's diplomatic corps. I'm going to spend the rest of my life learning from them. If we're lucky, maybe we can become half as wise as they pretend not to be. 5 years after first contact, Earth hosted the Galactic Council for the first time. Representatives from 40 species gathered in Geneva. Dr. Sarah Chun, now serving as humanity's chief ambassador, opened the session with a simple statement. Welcome to Earth. We're glad you're here. Let's figure out how to make this galaxy a better place. Together. The council sessions lasted for months. Trade agreements were signed. Defense pacts established. Scientific collaboration initiated. And in orbit, the human fleet kept watch. Small ships, unarmed by galactic standards. But every species present knew the truth. Humanity didn't need weapons to be dangerous. They just needed a reason. And as long as the galaxy remembered that, peace was possible. High Commander Vexthor, now serving as the hegemony's permanent ambassador to Earth, stood with Selvan on the observation deck of the Geneva space station. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we'd sent a larger fleet? Vexthor asked. Yes, Selvan replied. I wonder if we'd still exist. You really think they could have destroyed us? I think they could have destroyed everyone. But they chose not to. That's what makes them different. Below them, Earth turned into darkness. 8 billion humans going about their lives. Building, creating, arguing, loving, living. They're still fighting among themselves, Vexthor noted, watching news feeds. Political conflicts, economic disputes, social struggles. They are, Selvan agreed. And that's good. How is that good? Because it means they're still focused inward, still working on themselves, still trying to be better. Selvan smiled. The day humanity unifies completely, the day they stop arguing and start agreeing on everything, that's the day we should be worried. Why? Because it'll mean they've found an external enemy worth unifying against. And whatever made humanity stop fighting itself long enough to work together perfectly. Selvan's expression turned serious. That enemy won't survive the week. Vexthor considered that in silence. Finally, he asked, what's your assessment of humanity's long-term trajectory? They'll expand slowly, build carefully, spread across the stars at their own pace. They'll share their knowledge, defend their friends, and avoid conflicts when possible. And if someone attacks them again, then we'll all learn what humanity is really capable of when they stop holding back. You sound almost hopeful about that. I'm not. But if it has to happen, I'm glad they're on our side. The two Crithians stood in comfortable silence, watching the small blue world that had changed everything. A chime interrupted their thoughts. Selvan checked his communicator. News from the frontier, he said. The Cauldron Empire just sent scouts into the Tau Ceti system. That's near human space. Very near. The Cauldron are aggressive. They might not have received the memo about Earth. Vexthor pulled up tactical data. The Cauldron Empire was powerful, militaristic, proud. They'd been expanding for centuries and wouldn't stop for anyone. Should we warn them? Selvan asked. The humans already know. Look, Vexthor pointed at Earth's orbital network. Power signatures were spiking, defense platforms activating, ships moving into position. They detected the Cauldron scouts before we did. What will they do? Watch. Wait. Hope for peace. Vexthor's expression was grim. And prepare for war. 3 days later, a Cauldron War fleet entered the Tau Ceti system. 50 ships, battle-hardened crews, weapons that had shattered a dozen civilizations. They found a human colony on Tau Ceti 3. Population, 15,000. No military presence. The Cauldron commander sent the standard demand, submit or die. The human response was calm. We decline. Please leave our system. The Cauldron commander laughed and ordered his fleet to attack. The orbital defense platforms around Tau Ceti 3 activated. What happened next entered galactic legend. The Cauldron fleet lasted 7 minutes. 7 minutes against weapons the humans had spent 5 years developing in secret. Weapons built from the theories they'd shared with their allies, refined and perfected. Energy shields that redirected attacks back at their source. Missiles that phased through armor. Beams that ignited fusion cores from light years away. And one weapon the Cauldron never expected. The humans had weaponized their FTL drive. Ships that could appear inside enemy formations, deliver their payload, and vanish before shields could react. It wasn't a battle. It was a demonstration. When it was over, the Cauldron fleet was debris. Every ship, every crew. The human transmission to the Cauldron homeworld was brief. We warned you. We gave you a chance to leave. You chose violence. We ended it. Consider this your only warning. Earth and its colonies are off limits. Tell everyone. Make sure they understand. We don't want to be warriors. But if you make us fight, we'll win. Decisively. Finally, absolutely. Choose peace. Please. The transmission ended. The Cauldron Empire, facing rebellion from worlds that saw what happened to their fleet, collapsed within a year. Humanity didn't conquer their territory. They didn't claim it. They didn't even patrol it. They just made sure everyone in the galaxy knew. The price of attacking Earth was annihilation. And peace, enforced by the certainty of absolute retaliation, spread across the stars. Aboard the Geneva station, Vexthor watched the aftermath unfold. They did it again, he said quietly. They won without wanting to. They're good at that, Selvan replied. How long can they maintain this? How long before someone calls their bluff? It's not a bluff. That's what you're still not understanding. Selvan pulled up data from Tau Ceti. Those weapons they deployed, they're 3 generations behind what they're developing now. How do you know? Because I have security clearance. The humans trust me, and they wanted someone to know, to understand. His expression was haunted. They're building things that make the Tau Ceti weapons look primitive. Why? Because they're afraid. Afraid of what else might be out there. Afraid that one day, they'll meet something that actually threatens them. Something that can't be reasoned with or deterred. And when that day comes, They'll deploy weapons that make spatial manipulation devices look like children's toys. They'll crack worlds if they have to. They'll ignite stars. They'll tear holes in reality itself. And they'll hate themselves for it. Every single human will carry the weight of what they've done. But they'll do it anyway. Because survival matters more than guilt. Vexthor was silent for a long moment. I'm glad there are friends, he finally said. So am I, Selvan agreed. So am I. Dr. Chen stood before the Galactic Council one final time before retiring from her position. I want to thank everyone for giving humanity a chance, she said. For seeing past our initial response. For accepting our partnership. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives from dozens of species. Some of you came here because you were afraid of what we might do. Others came because you were curious. A few came because you needed our help. Whatever your reasons, you're here now. And you're welcome to stay. But understand this. Earth will defend itself. Humanity will protect its own. And if anyone, anywhere, threatens the principles we hold dear, freedom, justice, the right to determine our own future, we will respond. Not with conquest, not with an empire, but with the full force of everything we're capable of. We don't want to be warriors, but we've been warriors for our entire history. We know how to fight. We know how to win. And we know how to make victory so devastating that no one will dare to try again. She smiled then, warm and genuine. But we'd rather be friends. Partners. Allies in building something better than endless conflict. The choice is yours. It's always been yours. We're just making sure you understand the consequences of that choice. The council chamber erupted in applause. Not because humanity had threatened them, but because humanity had promised them something no other species ever had. Peace through strength. Protection through capability. Partnership through choice. And the galaxy, for the first time in its long, violent history, believed that peace might actually be possible. All because one species had learned to live with itself, and chose to share that lesson with everyone else. The Terran ship that had destroyed the Crithian compliance fleet sat in a museum now, on the lunar surface. Decommissioned. Unarmed. A monument to what humanity could do when pushed. Tourists from across the galaxy visited it daily. They stood before the small vessel and read the plaque. TDF Consequence, First Defense Ship. Operational, 6 weeks victories, 1 casualties inflicted, 15 ships, 4,000 plus personnel, human casualties, 0. This ship proved that humanity would defend itself. May it never need to fly again. And beneath that, in smaller letters, they laughed at the scouts' reports. They mocked our numbers. We made them pay attention, not with conquest, not with cruelty, but with the simple demonstration that Earth would not be threatened. Let this ship stand as a reminder. Humanity seeks peace, but we're prepared for war. Choose wisely. Visitors from 100 worlds read those words and chose peace because they'd seen what happened when someone chose war, and they never wanted to see it again. In a classroom on Earth, a teacher addressed a group of children from a dozen different species. Humans, Prithian, Varith, reformed, Cauldron, refugee, others. Today we're going to learn about the First Contact War, she said. The children leaned forward, eager. It lasted 30 seconds. 15 alien ships were destroyed. 0 humans died. A Crithian child raised a hand. Why did they attack you? Because they thought we were weak. They saw our divisions, our crowded planet, our primitive technology. They assumed we couldn't fight back. Were you scared? A human child asked. The teacher smiled, terrified. But we were also prepared. Our ancestors had spent centuries developing weapons, not because they wanted to use them, but because they knew one day they might have to. Did you want to fight? No. We wanted to be left alone. We wanted to keep building our world, exploring our system, learning about ourselves. But when someone threatens you, you have a choice, submit or resist. Our ancestors chose to resist. She pulled up an image. The consequence in orbit, weapons charged, shields glowing. This ship was built in 6 weeks. Everything on it came from theories we developed over decades. When we needed it, we built it. When the threat was over, we retired. That's the lesson I want you to understand. Power isn't about what you build. It's about what you choose to do with it. Humanity has the power to destroy worlds. We choose to build them instead. We have the power to wage war. We choose to keep peace instead. We have the power to conquer. We choose to cooperate instead. That choice, That's what makes us strong. Not our weapons, not our ships, not our technology. Our strength is knowing when to use power and when to show restraint. The children absorbed this in silence. Finally, the Crithian child spoke again. Will there be another war? The teacher's smile faded. Maybe. Probably. The galaxy is a big place. Not everyone has learned the lessons we've learned. But if there is, then humanity will defend itself, and our friends, and anyone who needs defending. Because that's what we do. We fight when we have to. We show mercy when we can. And we never, ever give up. The class ended. The children filed out, talking excitedly about starships and weapons and battles. The teacher stayed behind, looking at the image of the consequence. I hope you never fly again, she whispered to the empty classroom. I really do. But she knew better. Somewhere, in the dark between stars, something was waiting. Something that wouldn't be deterred by demonstrations. Something that would push humanity to its limits. And when that day came, the consequence would have successors. Bigger, faster, deadlier. Because humanity had learned one final lesson from their long, bloody history. Hope for the best. Prepare for the worst. And when the worst comes, make sure you're ready to end it. Decisively. Finally. Absolutely.